Good morning and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Perspective Lives. My name is Shahad Makiza, and today we have a very insightful show talking about corruption in sports and how various bodies are working to tackle organized crime groups. In 2018, the Global Coalition to Fight Financial Crime was announced, having the World Economic Forum, Refinitiv, and also Europol as one of the founding members. The purpose for the companies is to work together and support investigations to, of course, dismantle criminal networks to launder their criminal profits. Today, we will discuss the recently published report from Europol that found that organized crime groups have also turned to sports corruption to increase their illegal assets by manipulating sporting events worldwide. I am very happy to welcome such a strong combination of experts today. Welcome Sergio Dorsey, Head of Analysis Project Corruption at Europol, Ennio Bovolenta, Head of Integrity at FIFA, and also Refinitiv's Global Head of Financial Crime and Industry Affairs, Che Sidanius. Welcome, everyone.
Good morning, Shahad.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you all for taking your time. As mentioned just now, Sergio, the Europol report is pointing out different types of manipulation and also corruption in sports. Can you maybe start explaining a little bit for our audience what a typical match fixing operation looks like and how organized crime networks operate?
Good morning, Shahad. Thank you again for this opportunity to bring us live and to share our experience. And thank you for the question. I'll go straight to the point. Involved in sports for us. And
Sorry, I think we lost Sergio a bit. So maybe if I can fill in a little bit.
Such large scale match fixing.
So let me jump in. We know Europol well, and we as a company have also been quite active on this incredibly important topic. And their seminal report on this is way overdue in our view, but I think it's an incredible contribution to really call attention to one of the most underreported issues that we hope to work with Europol and FIFA and many others. And some of the key findings are quite revealing in the sense that the scale of the sports betting market, for instance, while not all of it is of course due to criminal activity, but it's the amount of it of being $2 trillion equates to about 10% of the EU's GDP and 10% of the US GDP. So this gets to the scale of that. And the contribution that Europol made here really is around the connection between the sports betting market, the criminal elements, and how it may affect sporting arrangements and events all around the world. And this is not just about sports betting, right? It's a multitude of issues that are affected, including player transfers, procurement processes, the transparency in terms of how events are being awarded, and to the question of why are we so passionate about this topic? It's a question that we're all passionate about. We're all sports enthusiasts. We all have some of our greatest memories and some of our greatest disappointments. And the issue of protecting the integrity of sports in general is not only close to our heart because we're all fans of football in particular, but other sports as well, but also to the key issue of protecting the integrity of the sport itself, to make sure that we can all believe in the results, we can all believe in the fact that the best teams and the best events and the best countries are being chosen. So I think this is part of why we are certainly passionate about this topic. And we hope we can get Europol back on this. But I celebrate them and really commend them of bringing light on some of these issues. And I hope that we can continue very collaboratively to work together on some of these topics. And we can get into the role of the Global Coalition in a minute. But just to fill in for Europol in terms of some of their insights and their contribution.
maybe also we can head back to Ennio also, because we read in the principles of FIFA's integrity initiative also that, of course, FIFA is also trying to protect the football matches and the competitions. Can you maybe explain a little bit more on what FIFA is doing against or to fight financial crime and match fixing in general?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for the question, Shahad. Well, I think that the fight against match fixing or match manipulation, as we it's called in our regulations, is one of the major objective of FIFA. Is in the statutory objective, and the initiative of FIFA in particular is articulated in the activity of our department, which is the integrity department, which is the department devoted to specifically devoted to the fight against match fixing. We know, and we also read with very extreme interest the last Europol report, and congratulations for this excellent work. And that's indeed financial crime is also infiltrating in match manipulation and in the match fixing, and we know that football is the sport that is more affected in the world by this cancer, which is a threat to football itself in the first place, because it ruins the unpredictability of sport, which is the essence of sport. That is why we all like sports, on the one hand, and on the other hand, it really risks to ruin the life of many players, because we have also to remember that if in case there is a match manipulation incident, a player could be banned for life from playing football. So this can have a devastating impact also on the personal life of the persons involved in football. So this is why FIFA adopted since the very beginning a zero tolerance approach against match fixing, and FIFA initiatives go exactly in this direction, which is actuating preventive measures, which is mainly adopting all the educational programs and initiatives in order to educate the players to the risks connected to match fixing, because we have to remember that most of the time the match fixers are experienced criminals, which we cannot tackle directly because they are out of sport jurisdiction, and this is why it's so important for us the cooperation with law enforcement and with partners also. Indeed, the Europol is playing an important role in this field, but we can, as I said, we can only limit our jurisdiction to sport, and so we should implement programs for educating the players to the risk of being approached by these reckless criminals who are trying just to exploit the players as tools for achieving their illicit goals. But this is not only before with these educational programs. I could make a lot of examples. We have from many workshops, seminars, conferences with the football associations, confederations. Before the competitions, we go there, we speak with the players, we talk to them, we talk also to the referees, because also the referees can be targeted by match manipulation. And then eventually we monitor the competition. We created in the last Women's World Cup a very important task force with law enforcement monitoring all the matches in real time in order to ensure that no incidents could occur. And we protect the game also afterwards, because we conduct investigative proceedings. So we have we could not be efficient if we would not be acting also after that the competition takes place. So it's very important for us to conduct investigations if we receive suspicious information about suspicious matches. We can receive it via our partners, via betting monitoring companies, but we can also receive it anonymously. We have implemented many reporting platforms. Many channels are open in order to allow to everybody who is informed about potential match incidents to report to FIFA. We have an app, we have a website we have a dedicated mailbox. It's all. I could speak for hours probably, but just to make clear that anyone who is in possession or is aware of information can report to FIFA and can even do it anonymously. We receive all the information, and if they have information which is relevant for starting an investigation, this is how we do it. So
thank
that
you.
is almost all for an initial overview of our activity.
I see Sergio is coming back and forth live, so I will would like to continue with you, Che, also to come back also to the Coalition to Fight Financial Crime. Why is this a topic that Refinitiv has aimed to raise awareness of? Can you give us an overview on how these type of organizations provide a platform to discuss these issues?
Sure. So first a bit about ourselves. Of course, we're a data company that provide risk intelligence to not only the financial system, but also to financial intelligence units and corporates and many organizations for the purposes of screening their due diligence processes to understand who they're doing business with, where the risk may lie in terms of being exposed to working with organizations that are involved in illicit activity, human trafficking, or other types of exploitation. And as part of that effort, not just as a data company, but a part of our effort that really we need to work together in a better way that we've done in the past. And when I say we, there's an ecosystem of organizations out there who are trying to play their part. We have civil society through NGOs, we have law enforcement, we have a banking system, and we have other organizations like FIFA and others who are committed to doing this. But this is a bigger problem than each individual organization. Criminals are incredibly sophisticated, they're global, and they have some quite impressive assets at their disposal in terms of professionals who exploit the system in a way. So the coalition is really an attempt to bring different parts together, to change policy, to inform the European Commission, as an example, where sports and corruption has been put very much on the policy priorities. Also engage with Financial Asset Task Force, also engage with other international players, really to make sure that we can move away from this less than 1% of money laundering is actually caught in the system, which has been going for 30 years. And the definition of insanity, as far as I understand it from Einstein, is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So the attempt by the coalition is really to address those things. And I think a topic like corruption in sports is such a prevalent one and very much one that I hope that we can bring to the coalition to bring these parties together. So this is not just a FIFA problem. This is a civil society problem, a law enforcement problem, a banking problem. And it's really how we can frame that in a more constructive way in order to identify key weaknesses and at the same time being very precise on the key things that we need to do, which includes information sharing. It includes things like looking at typologies, and it includes things like education throughout many of the key players. So that really is the intent of the coalition, and hope we can play a role on this topic in particular.
Thank you, Che. We have Sergio back, and you already, Che already mentioned the size of the betting market. In the Europol report, we also read that it's estimated to be around 1.7 trillion euros per year. And there's, of course, a lot of focus on football, as we can all imagine, having that big betting market attached to it. Do we see, Sergio, from your opinion, any trends or disruptions since the COVID-19 pandemic began?
Well, yeah. First of all, apologize for the technical issues. Hopefully I'm back. So going back to your question, indeed, the global betting turnover is really huge and impressive. And what we have noticed that this has been drastically going on and on the last few years. So we started in 2015-16 with around 750 billion. Then we went over 1 trillion, and this is the current estimation. So really huge. And of course, organized crime groups take really advantage of this, of the betting turnover, and especially in the sense of trying to manipulate matches for betting purposes. So to gain high legal profits from the betting markets, both in Europe and in Asia. Particularly during the COVID-19, Europol has actually monitored the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on the organized crime landscape. And there has been an impact on that, and also on money laundering and corruption crimes. In fact, as a fact, we know that organized crime groups are very good at adapting to these changed circumstances, which, for example, was the pandemic. And also in the field of sports corruption and the match manipulation, they've been, despite the fact that all of the global professional sports shut down, and therefore there were very little games, professional games being played in a few countries in the world. We have seen those organized crime groups have been able to exploit those markets, and focusing perhaps on youth matches or friendly matches, both for leagues and for international friendlies. So those matches that normally offer a much lower, for example, media coverage, they are not televised, and however they do offer, they are offered on the betting markets. So still, there are quite some profits to be made, and these let's say niche markets are the ones where we have seen organized crime groups having a focus during the pandemic, and we anticipate that this will be also after. We've also seen instances where such organized crime groups have displayed some creativity, if we want to say, for example, making up the so-called ghost matches, so matches that in practice do not exist, with fake lineups, and they broadcasting them in fake blogs on fake social medias. So the criminals have really displayed quite some skills in the various fields, IT skills, on the betting markets, and then being able to profit from the betting markets on those inexistent matches. And we have recorded some instances of that more randomly. But this is just to show, to give a sound of the various types of opportunities for organized criminals to exploit this crime during the pandemic.
So we have, it's really organized crime groups, and in the beginning we asked what a typical match fixing operation looks like. Do we have any kind of maybe anything that could explain a little bit in that kind of direction?
I'll try. Thank you for the question. I'll try to briefly recap on that and cover on the technical issues that we had. Indeed, this is a global phenomenon, as Che has already mentioned. It's a global phenomenon. It's a serious crime and that's why Europol is involved, because it's just one way for large organized crime groups operating cross-border globally to make money and to launder money. So in this scale, a typical large-scale match-fixing operations is acted by a group that is indeed mostly operating transnational, that has a very good knowledge and expertise on a number of factors. So deep knowledge of the sports environment that the organized crime groups are aiming to target. Deep knowledge on the betting markets, obviously, in Europe, in Asia, the regulated one, the unregulated and illegal one, which are present in large numbers, especially in Southeast Asia. And last but not least, a very deep knowledge of the sports environment. In fact, the structure is normally composed by different layers. We came up with a business model, Europol, based on our analytical findings, where we see some sort of a pyramid, where on the top of the pyramid there are the heads of the criminal groups, which can be based in Europe or outside Europe. And they are normally also the financiers, the one that give the green light to go on with the scheme, the one who fund the whole operation. So the cost, the logistics, the bribing cost. And then we have a middle level represented by intermediates, or as we used to call them, runners. Those operate on a regional level, or more locally on a national local level. And they are basically the people that often come from the sports environment, but not only, and sometimes are former sportsmen that basically are able to influence, to contact the ultimate layer. So the players that are ultimately the actors that will be influencing the matches. And once those runners are able to approach the players, and they are sure that there will be, of course, a cooperation in the scheme and the match fixing scheme that they are aiming at implement, then when this is confirmed, then there is the okay from the higher echelons of the criminal network is to go on with the scheme. We have seen cases where match fixing scheme have been called off, just prior to the match because something went wrong. So normally this is the way it works. So different layers, each one with the different roles and different tasks, and with the specific expertise. And often what happened, and this is also, I would say, a challenge for the law enforcement, is that we see operation investigations that are considered successful. However, even though there are investigations, people indicted, people prosecuted, eventually convicted as well, those represent often the very bottom layer of this pyramid. So those people are often the players, but the players, they do represent really as I say, the bottom level. And what we need to do as law enforcement collectively, and with the help, of course, of other organizations, also from the private sector and from the sports, is indeed to be able to start tackling, identifying this criminal network from the bottom level, but then being able to go up to the middle intermediate level, to the upper echelons, and to hit them wherever they operate. Because that's the only way, if we do this, and we do this transnationally, that's the only way we can dismantle these criminal networks. Otherwise, the bottom level will be hit by, I don't know, law enforcement action, and then perhaps players will end up with sports sanction or criminal sanctions, and then the criminal network will continue operate unarmed. And that's what they normally do. They just cut off the last layer, and then they move to the next match, next sport, next country, or eventually they go back to the same country where they've been. So this is the way they operate. So they really can continue to operate, let's say, often unarmed, moving from sport to sport, from country to country. And this is something, so we have to perceive that this is a global dimension, and only identifying the various layers of this complex organized crime structures, we will be able to have a real and meaningful impact on them. And to do this, of course, we rely, as I said, on the cooperation from the sports world, from the private sector, financial, and also many companies who with the monitoring of betting markets and trades, in betting trades. So this is a collective effort. I think this is being mentioned already before, and and each of us is to indeed play a role. This is, in a nutshell, the way these criminal groups operate on a large scale, on a cross-border scale.
I mean, there have also been, different approaches to fight any type of crime, and also to fight this type of crime in sports. Here we're talking about also restrictions to cross-border gambling, for example. If you're already addressing what we have to do, what role does technology play in this context, or for Europol also specifically, especially from a now also virtual betting plays perspective? Is there anything that Sergio, also for you?
This is a question for me. I hope I understood you, because I got a little bit broken at the line. But if we are talking about cross-border technology impact, if I understand correct the question.
And what role does technology play in general?
Indeed, for us, the technology factors are really crucial in this crime area. So online technology. In fact, we see that the on betting platforms, for example, that are used nowadays, they allow access to a large number of bettors worldwide instantly in a matter of minutes or seconds. This has, of course, increased, for example, the dimension of the online betting, which is now the one, especially in the live betting, the one that is particularly chosen organized crime networks. But again, online also means the using of these for other purposes. So not only for the betting, but also to move money. We have seen as a trend in many cases that nowadays the criminals use money business and online, for example, wallets to transfer money, fuel betting accounts, and to transfer money which are used, for example, to bet on manipulated matches. And there is a means to accumulate illegally profits, illegally obtain assets. So as we see this, the financial perspective and financial transactions, they do occur online, the betting occur online, and also even the social network, for example, are misused by criminals to approach or even to recruit other members or sportsmen. So and they use it even as a modus to operandi to engage in encrypted communication. So as we see that the impact on the technology is significant, and this is something that we are aware of, but it needs also pose also as a challenge for. In other words, and with this I conclude, this the match manipulation in particular is we can well define as an internet facilitated crime, and therefore all of the measures that I think you were referring to are things that we should consider at the policy level. So the type of gambling, the cross-border gambling, and some options. I think it's up to the policy to develop, and they are not easy to develop because they foresee a combination of what is possible on the IT perspective, IT elements, and what is legal. So that's a long debate here. We will be running out of time if we
I
get into that
imagine.
now, but this is really something meaningful that should about.
Thank you. Also, I would like to ask Ennio, FIFA see the biggest opportunities to use technology to protect the integrity of football, and let's keep it more general in this case. And also we will be opening up to questions, or we are have opened up to questions. So please take the opportunity to ask anything, any burning questions that you want to have posted for our experts.
Thank you, Shahad. Let's make a little preamble, which is just to make it clear. This point was already addressed by Sergio, but I find it crucial. That in order to tackle match fixing, match manipulation, it is crucial that this issue is faced from all the possible angles, from the different perspectives, which is the law enforcement perspective and the sports perspective, because we alone cannot convict anyone. We cannot put, as was said, people in prisons or tap phones. No, we don't have the tools of law enforcement for fighting match fixing. Equally, I understand that the perspective of law enforcement is of another dimension, and the information sharing between law enforcement and sports jurisdiction can be indeed can really make a stronger the front against the match manipulation. Because Sergio was making the example of different layers when there are convictions in among match fixers. For us, it's even worse because we can eventually spot or sanction players or referees, officials, but we only have to deal with the consequences of the match fixing, but we cannot eradicate match fixing itself. So in order for doing that, I think that a mutual exchange of information and making a compact front is the way forward, working together. And this is the approach that FIFA is undertaking by concluding accordion cooperations also with entities which are outside of the sports world, among the law enforcement agencies, also among the international organizations. Recently, we closed a memorandum of understanding with the UNODC, United Nations Agency Against Organized Crime, so doping and crime. So just an example. We support a group of Copenhagen, the Makiza Conventions, which is basically the first attempt, which was set up by the Council of Europe, which we support in this initiative to create national platforms operating at national levels, involving also law enforcement with the objective of targeting match fixing from a broader perspective. This being said, the rule of the use of technology from our side in our activity, well, depends on what do you intend for technology. As I said, we cannot tap phones, but indeed, through our partners, we can receive a lot of intelligence and on materials which we can use within the framework and the context of our investigations. For the future, probably this is quite off topic considering the really specific issues that we discussed. But for the future, what I could find interesting is to see whether science can offer us some instruments for detecting from the performance of the player on the pitch whether there are elements which might raise the suspicion of a manipulated match. I see that this is really complicated, but it's something that, if you ask me something for the future, that could be interesting to see if there is a way forward that would be an interesting application of technology in the fight against match fixing, at least from the sports perspective, because I understand that if we talk about how to find connections between criminal syndicates and the match fixers and the players and gambling in general, understand that probably Sergio has more insights about how to use technology. So this is mainly it from our side.
Thank you. From the perspective of Che, from your side, what can we expect in the new coalition, and what do we expect from other organizations in regards of technology?
So let me start with the technology piece first, since we are a technology company at the end of the day. So in terms of how it can be deployed, it's fairly straightforward in the sense of being able to screen and having an understanding of who the players in this ecosystem, known players, and I'm using players in a general sense, not the football players on the pitch themselves. And it's really understanding who are they connected to, and are they associated with some type of criminal activity that may need to do some further due diligence behind that. The second is understanding, the amount of money, not only in the sports betting market, but the amount of investments coming into football teams, in particular, just using football as an example, are just enormous. So where is this coming from? Who are the ultimate beneficial owners? Sometimes it's behind, shadowy or kind of holding companies, and it's not really clear, depending on the ownership structure, who the ultimate owner of that shell company is, and there's a role for technology there as well. So that's from a sort of a due diligence screening and due diligence perspective. On the role of the coalition, so in the spirit of what Sergio said and Ennio, again, the purpose of it is to be a platform, a neutral platform, if you will, to take the politics out of it, and really to bring expertise together, to bring it to bear. We have our expertise, the banking sector has their expertise. We work with NGOs who work in many parts of the world with this very little open intelligence available to organizations to really dig deeper. And it's really, and I see that platform as, and the issues that Ennio has talked about and identified are not specific to football. There's the same issues in the banking sector, it's the same issues in the financial sector, and it really is about, to the point that's already been made, how do we use information in a more intelligent-led way? How do we make decisions and inform policymakers based on evidence and research and capability in order to find a policy mechanism that's actually anchored in the types of risk and emerging risks that we are seeing. And then to Sergio's point, this is a global problem. And how do we engage with FATF? How do we engage with other actors like as FIFA has done, but more from a practical policy-making perspective, which will allow the private sector and organizations like FIFA to share information with law enforcement, which is not always the case, by the way. We think it's the case, it should be the case, but it's not always the case. There are a number of restrictions potentially in different regions around the world for us to do that. And again, that's not just a sporting issue, but that's an issue that we're trying to deal with in other areas as well. And then lastly, since I have the floor, and I will conclude, one area that we're seeing referenced by Sergio is the online gaming community, which is exploding in terms of use. Now, we're all sitting in our homes and our kids are sitting in our homes, and online gaming is just growing at an exponential rate. And the connection between virtual assets or virtual value in upgrading certain functions within your team or kind of the sport that you're doing, and then translating that and extracting that value from a fiat value to an actual value is increasing. And that's another mechanism for criminals to use, and to do it via teenagers as well, and to do it via a younger generation who may be sort of less aware of some of these issues. So I will stop there, because I know that there's, I'm sure, plenty to discuss here, but hopefully I've given my perspective on those issues.
Thank you, Che. We have also a few questions from the audience. Also, what I'm hearing out of your answer is not only technology, but also the transparency, the disclosure, and working together, and not just Refinitiv, let's say, as one company working to fight financial crime, the due diligence aspects, but also to have more companies, institutions, and organizations bonding in this matter. And also we have that one question leading also to the football teams. So this is a question for you, Ennio. They're asking, are football teams and organizations supporting this task force? Is anyone publicly involved in these matters as well?
I'm not aware of specific football teams, because I think you are really going a little bit too far. We are structured as a pyramid in the football world in terms of organizations, where basically in the world of football we have FIFA, which is reuniting all the 6 confederations operating at continental level, and each confederation is directly dealing with a certain number of members associations, or as we call normally federations, just for you to know, football federations. And anyway, all these football federations are affiliated to FIFA as well, and there are 211. So each of these football association has its own integrity initiative. Is joining his own integrity coalition. So I cannot. I apologize, but I don't know in detail all the 211 initiatives active in all these football federation. But I can tell you that usually these kind of coalitions are joined by the confederations in the first place, and also by FIFA. So FIFA is already a member of many of these coalition and task forces, as I mentioned before. Also, the various some of the various cooperation agreements that we have in place with intergovernmental organizations, but it is FIFA. So I can tell you that also the confederation members of FIFA, among others. Now I should mention them all just in order not to create discrimination. But we have CONCACAF in Northern and Central America. We have CONMEBOL in Southern America. We have UEFA in Europe, CAF in Africa, AFC in Asia, and OFC in Oceania. So just to give you, I mentioned them all. There is no discrimination at all. So, and I can tell you that each of them is developing their own integrity initiative. Anyway, always liaising with us, because in the end, it's very crucial that we create a compact front in the fight against match manipulation, and this is what we are currently doing.
Thank you. We have another question for you, Sergio. Are there any parallels that can be drawn from the way match fixing operates and historic stock price manipulation cases that can add the response? Any parallels drawn from the way match fixing operates and historic stock prices? I'm not quite sure if we lost Sergio again. We have also another question for Che. Why do you think that there is much less focus on CDD or KYC in sports compared to other sectors? For instance, finance, pharmaceutical, constructions, etc.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question from the audience. So there's two parts. There's regulatory focus and transparency. Clearly, from the banking sector and the financial sector, there is a very stringent and long list of regulatory requirements for banks that they need to meet in terms of doing their due diligence, know your customer processes, and also other issues that they're dealing with in terms of making sure that they're not dealing with a customer or an organization or a company that's on a sanctions list, because that is that could carry a heavy penalty, as we've seen. So, and obviously with the growth of FATF, the Financial Asset Task Force, and other regulatory communities, AML supervisors, the focus has primarily been the banks. Versus less in the sporting sector, which gets to the transparency part. There's been less transparent, in my view, about how these things actually operate, and how these criminal groups sort of work behind the scenes, in the shadows. Now, it's in some ways affected the banks in the sense that they need to make sure that the payments that are being made in a proper way, and that they're doing the due diligence in terms of doing screening. But on the other end, in the sporting sector, it just hasn't received historically, has just not received the same amount of attention as the banks have. Now, for banks in particular, this is an acute issue, right? Because God forbid they're deemed by the U.S. Treasury, for instance, to be skirting the U.S. sanctions rules, which could mean that they lose access to the dollar funding market. And if that happens, you go from viable to non-viable in a matter of days. Versus in the sporting sector, that might be a different issue. But I think that there's more, and Ennio can certainly speak to this much more eloquently than I can. But the awareness around these issues on corruption and match fixing is certainly not going to go away. And I know that from the European Commission, they've put that on a list of high priorities. And there's a general awareness in the society at large that players from sub-Saharan Africa need to be treated in an equitable way in terms of these immense transfer payments that are being made, in which they are high profile. It's a high profile human trafficking in some potential instances, the match fixing. Not just for football, but in other areas. So, so I applaud FIFA for addressing that, because it's not going to go away anytime soon. And there will be, maybe not as much as the banks, but I certainly think that there will be greater emphasis on protecting the integrity of the sporting sector, which we're all members of that family, and we all have a stake in making sure that we're doing the best to protect that integrity.
Thank you, Che. Did we get Sergio back on board, or I'm seeing something?
I can, if I can only endorse what Che was saying, just for the, as a side note, because I really appreciate what he mentioned, and I can see that irrespective of how many matches you have, and we noticed this as Sergio was correctly pointing out before, but match fixing continues always. So it's football or sports in general is just a tool for them. So basically, sports is the victim here, and the more that there is some sports events are under the spotlight, the more we notice that these individuals, organizations, criminal organizations go and look for other opportunities always within sports where there is less attention, or they think that there is less attention. So it's indeed there is no other solution rather than to join forces and continue in investing in this battle.
We have also a follow-up question. Should there be an regulator in sports, an independent regulator in sports? This is in the light of the fight against manipulation and trafficking, corruption. Question also from the audience. Should there be an independent regulator in sports?
I'll let Ennio go first.
Well, good question. Actually, sport in general, I mean, it's complicated. It's not an easy and straightforward question, and we could discuss about this for hours. I think we have first to reflect about the experiences that we had so far. We had certain sports where I know that there are very efficient and integrity units working independently. In other sports where this is less developed, I would say that in football we are doing an excellent work. At least I can speak for FIFA, but also my colleagues working in the integrity unit of different confederations are investing a lot, and there is a lot of communication among us because, as I said before, information sharing is crucial. So we alone as FIFA, we cannot look after all the every single football match in the world, because otherwise we would need really a bigger organization here to look for all these matches. But we do it, we ensure this result by basically dividing the jurisdiction over the football matches among the confederations. Sometimes it's us directly, our competitions, but also at national level, depending if we are talking about national events. So in the longer period, it's difficult to say whether we might have like such an entity overseeing match manipulation at worldwide level. My opinion that such an entity should be, if will ever exist, but really should be an instance having all the actors in the fight of match fixing all together, working on the same side. So I think that we can achieve the same result as we are doing right now for football. I cannot speak for the other sports, but I think that so far we are already on the right way indeed.
Thank you. I think to Che's answer.
Yeah, so I'll try to be brief because I appreciate we're going a bit over our time, and thanks Ennio for that answer. So I guess to answer that question, again, I will draw lessons learned in the banking sector, right? So the Financial Action Task Force, if we're going to use that as a measure, has been in existence for 30 years, and so AML legislation have been in existence for 30 years, and there's a few lessons, hopefully, that might be helpful in this conversation. The first, which the question gets into, self-regulation versus an independent body. And there, I think FIFA has an incredibly important role. If we maintain self-regulation, which is in itself a controversial topic, even in the banking sector. In fact, the European Commission are even currently discussing through their AML action plan, creating a completely separate new entity at the European level, away from the EBA, away from the ECB, away from ESMA and other regulatory bodies on this exact question. And if we move into the self-regulatory space without policy and sort of and the rest of it to create a independent public body, then I think setting minimum standards, I think is going to be key. FIFA has a role in that in terms of what competitions, what sports teams are required to do as far as minimum standards around player transfers, minimum standards around being transparent about how competitions are being exercised and are being deployed and given, being transparent around those issues, which I think would go a long way. You know, there's a question of removing heat and in increasing light. An increasing light in the space, I think, would be a good thing. And then the last thing, I guess, is, again, to Ennio's point, we'll be happy to work with you on this, is really to bring you along on some of those journeys that we've done in the banking system, bring you along with the discussions that we're having with the policymakers, because there's a lot of, sometimes there's a misconception on things that you do and things that, we don't do. And I think, bringing those players together, and we can, play a role in that as partners on that discussion. And I think, this topic is not going to go anywhere. We know that for sure. And so there are lessons learned here from all of us that we can hopefully might be helpful in this context. But again, thank you very much for joining us in this important discussion. It's too bad we didn't have Sergio with us, but as long as we should have. But yeah, I'll leave that statement there.
Thank you. I mean, to despite any technical problems, I see we have another question coming in. Okay, not sure if that's coming. Something. There's another more general questions. Do you see it up here as well?
There's a question about whistleblowers. Let's see.
Yes, along the line of financial forensics, for many of these investigations, statistically, it is more likely that whistleblowers play a significant role, as they are likely to know the ground reality for a more aware of an ongoing fraud and risk. Other than anonymity, what can be done to get more people to report or come forward?
Good question. I think here it's really a big topic for discussion, and I don't want to go too long that we already did. Yeah. But in short, I think that it's also a cultural problem. It's not because in our regulations, it's a duty to report. If you don't report and you are under our jurisdiction, you might be sanctioned. But beyond that, in general, there is the cultural problem, the cultural issue of delivering the message that reporting is to the benefit of football, of sports. Sorry, I always speak about football. You will forgive me. Of sports and for protecting, in the end, the victims of match manipulation. In order to achieve this result, I think there is a cultural issue that we can solve with the educational programs, with the raising awareness. So it's in general, and make it clear that the tools exist, are there, and they're available to everyone. We have our reporting platforms. We promote them as much as possible. I mentioned already them are available on our website. But it's not only football. It's also, or it's not only FIFA. Reporting platforms are already existing, are available. Who reports anonymously? I mean, it's a tough decision sometimes. I understand, for someone who is not necessarily touched by the sports regulations to report. Sometimes it's a moral obligation, in my opinion. So in certain situations, and we can protect the identity of someone who doesn't want his identity to be revealed. This is clear. On the other hand, it's also clear that we take seriously all the reports that we receive, all the whistleblowers which who approach us. But sometimes from having just a message, sometimes it's not necessarily enough for starting an investigation. You should corroborate your argumentations in order to let us start the investigation. Anyway, any report we receive is always duly considered, because indeed it can be one person, can be 2, 3. If we have, also the quantity of persons reporting the same message can be really an indication that it's time to report. So I think that concluding, raising the culture, educating people, and making clear which are the possible instances for reporting are the way forward.
Thank you very much for taking that last question. We cannot take anything else. So I really want to thank you despite of the technical issues. Also, thank you to Sergio for joining us in this question. Thank you, Ennio. Thank you also, Che, for taking the time and taking also a bit more than planned. Also to the audience, if you enjoyed the discussion today, you can find a blog on perspectives on corruption in sports written by Che also, and there you'll find a link in the report written by Europol, the report that we were referring to. Also, just use the URL or scan the code that is shown in the screen right here.